Welcome to Movie and a Beer, everybody. This is Dan bringing us in, and we have an amazing group of friends gathered to have partaken in a most amazing film that we saw at a theater.
A fantastical film.
And we just came back from the theater, so let's find out what is it that we're doing here. We're going to talk about some D&D stuff, some Dungeons and Dragons. Scary stuff.
Well, we're also going to talk about beer, right?
We had beer while we were there, yes.
Yeah, we did. All right, so I'm Aaron. I'm your rules lawyer expert.
Oh, no.
This is Blake, your dungeon master. Roll for initiative.
Oh, jeez.
This is Deborah.
I got it, too.
I got it, too. Oh,
that's why you're going last, Brian.
Yes.
And I'm Brian, your gelatinous cube expert.
Oh,
hey, it's
gross.
the Roomba of the dungeon. It just sucks everything in.
It's
All right, so there's this film called Dungeons and Dragons.
This little indie movie.
Honor Among Thieves. It's been out in the theaters for a couple months now.
It's some studio named Hasbro, right?
Hasbro owns
Paramount,
the rights.
technically.
Paramount.
Right.
Paramount did it. Yeah, we're gonna not give them any more money than we need to, but we went to the theater and saw it as a group.
Indeed.
As one does. Our dungeon master for our group and these 5 people sitting here play in a group with someone else who runs our game. And if you're not familiar with Dungeons and Dragons, it's been around a long time.
Gary Gygax in 1976?
Yeah.
1978?
So this movie is based off of a number of different rule systems that have come and gone over the years.
Different settings, honestly.
And different settings. It's a kind of conglomeration of Forgotten Realms and a few other things. And that's cool because it's actually quite entertaining.
Let me back you up.
Bring it down. Bring it down for us, Aaron.
This is I went in
Aaron, roll to explain.
I went in expecting, this like high fantasy, Lord of the Rings, but this is a buddy movie. This is absolutely a buddy film. They get into, they got this heist that they're going to try and plan and pull off. And, with every good buddy movie, you've got this moment where characters have to decide, like, are they gonna prioritize themselves? Are they going to prioritize the greater good? What are they going to prioritize? Are they going to prioritize the mission? And so I was pleasantly surprised.
Friendship.
Or the friendship.
In terms of a buddy movie.
Yeah, and so I think this works really well as a buddy movie. Going into it, there was a question that I wanted to kind of think about as I was watching it, and one of those questions is, do you need to play D&D to enjoy this movie? Or maybe to say it in a better way, how much of this movie is lost on you if you're a viewer who's not familiar with D&D? How much of the movie can you still enjoy?
So I can actually answer that from the perspective of, we had a friend visiting from Germany who never played. I mean, he's played video games. He's familiar with the role-playing video game kind of scenarios.
He knows what a dragon is.
He knows Baldur's Gate, so he has some familiarity with
some like role-playing game structure framework.
He knew very basic. I didn't explain anything to him going into it, and I spent an hour after the movie explaining the movie to him, and he was like, if you would have told me this before, I think I would have enjoyed it more.
Okay. So there's some amount, some margin of. I don't think it necessarily would have to be D&D. If you play, Pathfinder, if you play some other type of RPG, I think you still walk away from a lot here.
I think there are enough fantasy tropes that you can enjoy it as just a fantasy film.
Right.
I look at
a sword and sandals. My favorite, my littlest dragon, or whatever it's called.
I didn't want to get ahead of myself, but my next question, Brian, was like, could this stand alone as a fantasy film without the D&D franchise behind it? Like, could this be a generic fantasy humor buddy movie?
I say yes. It would not have the legs of the fandom to push it.
Right.
So from what I read online, every D&D group went to see it as a group, so it's a guaranteed 5 to 6 tickets. A few of them, like me and Dan, went to see it more than once.
3 times.
I did 3 times, not to brag or anything. And it could be like it would be a fun fantasy movie without the trappings of Hasbro's property,
intellectual property stuff.
Yeah. Like it could still have like a panther-like monster that doesn't display an image. It would still be scary. Like they could have a big goo circle instead of a cube.
And you don't have to know oh, that's a D&D monster,
Yeah.
to know, that's what that thing does.
It's almost like a little bonus for us who have been playing for so long. Is man, I recognize that.
There's some interesting inside jokes and some things that they do.
There's good fan service.
There's a lot of that, and that's great. I mean, we all really enjoyed it quite a lot. It's
a blockbuster.
It's a blockbuster.
It's a big
film.
blockbuster movie.
I was charmed by this movie. I would say
it was an entertaining piece of entertainment.
I mean, it's just
it was light. It was adventurous. It was action packed.
Swashbuckly.
It's just a lot of. All you got to know is, and I wrote this into my notes. There's a fat dragon chasing the group. That's all you got to know.
Ember Shard. It's from the lore.
Yeah.
Apparently, it's part of the.
Anyone who can imagine a really portly, obese, pudgy dragon,
comically fat dragon,
chasing people around and not fitting into the places he's trying to get into. I mean, that's the whole point.
Can't fly. It's so fat.
It can't make fire without help.
It's just so. Its wings are so small.
So, favorite character? Because this is also kind of a heist movie.
Yeah.
Heist movies thrive on the various characters. Chris Pine's character, Edgin all day. I love it. I'm pretty sure he's not a bard at all. He's a fast talking guy with broken. And he has a beautiful tragic backstory.
Oh, totally.
I want to say he's probably multi-classed.
I can see that.
Yes.
Thief started out as a thief and then ended up as.
They don't specifically say.
Came back
they
to
also
being a
don't
thief.
say what Zank is, but it's so clear.
Kind of the least.
Straight up paladin. Yeah.
Right.
He's the least useful member of the group.
Yeah. What do you do? I mean, that was in the previews.
He's also the leader.
What do you do? Well,
he's the leader, but he's also
the face. He's the face.
Right. But he's also. He's also like the narrative push because it's his desire to reconnect with the. Well, I don't want to give away spoilers, but he's got a personal reason from a very close family connection that's motivating him through most of the plot.
Oh yeah, and
yeah.
No spoilers again, but I love the fact that towards the quarter to almost the end, his way of describing that is really poignant, and you wouldn't think of that.
Yeah.
And it's like, holy shit.
Oh yeah, I know what you're talking about. I love that scene.
Yeah.
But then there's Holga, played by Michelle Rodriguez.
My barbarian heart was so happy.
Yeah, I don't know. There's
you don't like that she likes little people?
I'm all about the little people. I mean, I play a lot of little people in the game, so I'm all about the halflings and the little people.
Oh, yeah.
But
there was no milk though.
She didn't really rage a whole lot. I mean, she just did some basic moves and stuff, and I was like, oh, you're
I'm
not
sorry,
really
when she's beating up 9 guards in armor, that's not raging.
She's totally raging. She does not sing.
You don't have to say it.
Yeah, I think it's not explicit, but like she is doing kind of what her class, and she's using the skills and the attributes and the abilities that if this was a tabletop campaign and it was 6 guys and ladies having beers, rolling dice, like all of the actions that these characters describe or portray in the movie. These are things that could have been described, I think, in a tabletop campaign.
Oh, totally.
And maybe, and sometimes flubbing the rules in 1 or 2 spots. But I think it's believable as a real D&D story.
Oh, yeah.
Oh, 100%.
And I'd like to call attention to the really perfect casting.
Mm-hmm. Yes. Hard agree.
Like each of the main characters were cast as they look like they would be a member of that character class in the game that this movie represents.
Yeah, I love Justice Smith. He was great in Detective Pikachu. Check that episode of the podcast, True Believers.
A long time ago.
And he's scrawny like a spellcaster. He looks like he'd be someone who never studied for magic. Yeah.
I mean, it's wild magic, so he's doing sorcery stuff, and I don't know if he's multi-classing, but he's straight up just. I mean, he's just using components, and he's unfortunately learning the hard way, like how to attune to something that doesn't want to attune to you.
Yes.
If you don't play,
speaking of which, Dan.
So, can I ask, like, is there any one? I'm going to go around the room here. So, Blake, I'll start with you.
Yeah.
Viewer, you can't tell. Blake's right to my immediate left. But
Aaron rolled a 20 on his left and right.
I rolled a 20 on my explanation. Is that no? But. Is there one character whose like backstory you find particularly interesting and compelling? So if you were including the main nemesis or even the Nemesis's henchmen, like who would you want to see a sequel made with like their story?
Oh, a sequel on it? I'd go,
or even a prequel if it was
no, I don't know. I don't care where they came. They explain where they came from. Dork. The tiefling druid.
Yes.
I'm a sucker for like born to a family and then abandoned story. I know it's trite. I know it's cliche. I love
And
it.
it's not like you played a character exactly like that, kind of, sort of, but it was more.
Well, he could wild shape. He's made stew.
I will out myself here, Blake. I'm a sucker for cute redheads. I'd want to see that movie too.
Good man. Good man.
But Deb,
very. I would love to see where Dork goes after. After the next events of this film, like, well, now what'd she do?
Deb, do you have a character you'd want to see, like the next chapter for them?
I'm curious about Holga because I am also a Critical Role fan, and I love the dialogue and play between Grog and Pike. And Grog is obviously a Goliath, and Pike is a halfling, so they kind of flipped it on its edge, and the love interest was a halfling.
Played by Bradley Cooper.
Yes, it was perfect. But I want to know how Holga got to that point.
Right.
Like, because she was part of, like, a tribe that was, like, very, like, warrior-based and, like, violence. And how did she...
They don't touch on that a lot. They just say that she left, but they never really say what they did.
Banished.
She was banished for like halfling.
Where did she meet this intriguing halfling man?
Exactly.
Okay.
Like,
all right.
How did she come to know this halfling? Why was she banished?
So kind of a rom-com.
Well, you know.
D&D, Sleepless in Sword Coast.
Damn it, you beat me to it. I was thinking Sleepless in Neverwinter?
That's the great thing about D&D, though, is sometimes if
the Fae book,
you can do, like, romance and shit.
Right?
Yeah.
Brian, what character do you want to see the next chapter?
I actually am intrigued by the main two nemeses.
Right.
Nemesis?
Forge and
then
Forge and the
Sophina,
the Red Wizard, the
Red Wizard of Thane, I think.
Yeah.
How did he convince her, or how did she?
How did she convince him to be so evil? I mean, he's really kind of a self-serving person,
right?
A con man.
A con man.
Yeah.
But she's evil. Not you. You'll figure it out really quickly. So I'm not plot spoiler. But I want to know how they met and how they came up with their evil plan.
All right. And Dan?
It's all about the paladin.
You mean the Dungeon Master player character?
Yes.
You know,
so what do you want to see? Like, do you want to see where he goes? Do you want to see his whole story growing up?
No. Well, see, they introduce his backstory a little bit. He escaped. Mm-hmm. He's got the markings. He's got the tattoos of the people that are the bad guys in the main universe that this occurs in. And he's like, no, I'm a good guy. And so his whole journey is just trying to prove that he's a good guy.
Oh yeah.
So
becoming this like unstoppable hero who like saves children and doesn't do sarcasm.
Yeah, that would be me. I mean, I lend myself to that character very easily.
But I like Zink, and like he's got this high charisma. He's very charming. You one of the best character introductions in a movie. I think you see him be charitable and dignified, and you see him be like a really helpful and valuable member of the community immediately. But then, in the span of 3 minutes, you realize he's very like righteous.
Oh, he's so righteous.
And a little bit of a dullard,
kind of a stick in the mud in some ways, right? Like
very lawful guy.
That was big ironic,
and I thought
it's not for anybody.
Well, I thought for the first minute he was on screen, he was going to be the main love interest of Doric, this cute redhead tiefling, and she picked up on his like lawfulness. I think very away,
very quickly.
And realized like, no, that's not the right fit. That's not the right fit.
He's not a bad boy.
No, not bad enough.
Aaron, have we gotten one from you? That you want to see?
I'm curious about Forge. I want to see did he start as evil? I want to see like a prequel. Like
he's not evil. He's just more
greedy.
Gray.
He's self-interested. He's selfish, and so
but he knew Seraphina's plot.
He did.
So that takes us.
It was going to involve him, so he didn't care.
He didn't care.
Yeah.
He didn't care. But I think like he started as a member of the party. And this is not a spoiler, dear listener, because like this all happens in the first 10 minutes of exposition. But
and it's in the trailers.
It's in the trailer. Oh well, that too. But I think like I want to see like how did he become kind of detached from the camaraderie of the group that he was in? What began to lead him astray? And how did he start making the choices that he was making? If I can't have a follow up with Dork, the redheaded tiefling, I would watch. I'd watch Forge.
I like that.
That is interesting.
I like that they made this a comedy.
Yeah.
Yes.
I don't think it would have had the same legs. I love I love Lord of the Rings. Obviously, I love fantasy. Big fantasy epics are great, but this was just so it felt like a campaign. Like it. Yeah. The whole bit with the talking to corpses for 5 questions.
Yes.
I heard our whole row of people laugh. Everyone here in this room chuckled at the 5 questions. Seems arbitrary. Yeah, right. It's weird. And then he's at.
Not only our row, but there was another group behind us who loved the film.
And again, asking Simon, is that a question? The corpse answers, I wasn't talking to you. Like, it's great. You get the action with it. It's
still a question.
This was a laugh of recognition, though, because I think every person who's played D&D...
I've done this as a dungeon
We've done this, and we've been in the situation. We recognize ourselves in it.
Yeah.
But, it's still funny. I think the humor is part of what gives this legs to go beyond just D&D players and be a film that has more of a broader appeal.
Yeah, I think the comedy was a good way to go, because if it would have been a drama, it would have been far too serious.
Right.
And we've had several serious, like, big fantasy things.
This couldn't compete with Game of Thrones if it tried to do exactly the same thing.
And it couldn't be like a gritty, edgy thing because it probably would lose people. So I think comedy was the best way to do it because it kind of ties into people's D&D campaigns.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
Most people, they're going to have, like, a little bit of a murder hobo thing, but most of the time it's silly, like, goofing off and, like, the DM and things like that.
Oh,
but
I've done that too.
I would say some of the criticisms of this have been the fantasy scenes of like the castle and stuff. That's too clean and too pretty.
No, it's too sanitized.
It's too sanitized.
No,
and it's
I agree.
I mean, have you ever been to a Ren fair? That's dirty as hell, dude.
And that would be a clean village for that time, right?
It's like, there's no way that city is that clean.
There's no open sewers anywhere.
Yeah.
Well, that's like how post-apocalypse shows and movies, everyone's teeth are still pearly white.
I'm just like,
this woman just woke up with perfect makeup. Weird.
They saved all the dentists, don't you know?
Totally. Well, it's just like, like the Wild West. Everyone is, it's like you're not covered in grime and you don't have like
cow pies
or like and like
just a layer of dust,
just a layer of grime, and you're just filthy and stinky.
So I was going to ask Brian about the salacious amounts of green screen and blue screen and various screens that they used in this.
Well, Dan, the only displacer beasts are in Holland, and they won't let them out.
I know,
it's a
right?
legal thing.
It's a zoology thing. Yes, I don't know. You've always been a strong not anti, but if it's just too much, if it's just too much and it distracts,
practical effects,
robots punching robots.
Is robots punching robots, or is this actually like they do a really good job of blending the live action and characters in with the scenes?
I would say they do a very good job. What I really don't like is when there's so much going on in the screen that you can't follow the action.
Oh, totally.
And even in the fight scene, there were really only 4 or 5 characters, usually just 1 or 2, in a shot interacting. And even though one of them or some of the effects were CG, you could still follow the action.
I feel that the pacing was done well.
And even when buildings explode in the background, it's still in the background, and there are only 2 characters in the foreground. You can still see what they're doing.
Right. They did a lot of quick cuts that were really spliced well together.
Right. And actually, beforehand, Dan and I were talking about CG in this. And one thing I really like about the film is that CG technology has come so far that they can build an entire fantasy world.
Right.
In past fantasy films like Legend or Willow,
I was just about to say Legend.
They used practical effects and didn't have CG to lean on.
Oh yeah.
And so you were always focused on this one fantastic element in the center of the screen.
Because that's what they had the budget for.
But the background had nothing fantasy about it. It was just a set. There's a set.
Or they're out near a river somewhere.
Right. And with this film, there are some interesting fantasy creatures kind of on rafters here and there in the background. If you're watching,
rust monsters.
Yeah.
One of the other dungeon masters I went to see this with, like, started punching my arm, like, "Oh my god, they have rust monsters!" Like, dude, yeah, I'm blown away. I never thought I'd see them in a film.
Yeah.
They have a lot of little Easter eggs if you know what to look for.
Yeah. The cart as it went by when they went to the town to get
With
the
paladin clan things,
had the big tongue that was whipping around. I was like, all right, is that the clam or is that a mimic?
Yes.
Because I don't think clams like that had big tongues that would stick out.
I was trying to. I haven't been playing D&D as long as some of the people at the table, so I don't know about the older monsters. It's possible.
I don't know.
But it did have a similar tongue to that treasure chest.
It did, and that's why I was like, that looks familiar.
And they used a real prop for the mimic.
Yeah.
Because I saw on Twitter, they were showing, because Michelle Rodriguez had the actual prop on her leg, and so they actually spliced the two together. They did CG and practical effects.
That helps make a scene more realistic, in that sense. They give, in the Marvel movies, they give Chris Evans a shield to hold and throw around. Once he lets go, they CG it bouncing around, but the man's got to wait. Yeah.
That makes his musculature be real, his action be real.
Versus just throwing something fake. What about that Dungeons and Dragons group that was there in the maze? Towards the middle.
Dan's talking about the 1970s cartoon.
There's a cartoon called Dungeons and Dragons, and they had these characters, and they do a cameo in this.
They do.
Multiple times. It's not just you see them for 2 seconds. No, you see them when they get to the end of the maze, and they're in the cage to get safety to the next round. No, I mean, it's straight up. It's all of them, and you're just like,
homage to previous iterations of this film.
Yes, very true.
I enjoyed it because I grew up watching that stuff.
Frankly, my only criticism with stuff like that is the same thing with Marvel movies now, where every single event is, oh, what's that lean to? What's that lean to? Just enjoy the movie, man. It's Shang-Chi beating up a dude on a bus.
Yeah.
And that's what I liked about this movie, because I know a lot of movies, you go into where you're like, what is the plot? What's this? What's going on? What's this? This one, you're just like, this is silly and ridiculous, and I like it. You're not going in expecting any big thing.
There's no expectation.
Not an epic.
It's
not complex storytelling.
No,
but enjoyable storytelling.
Yeah.
It's kind of a familiar story.
It gets the job done.
It's almost like it's not a complex beer, but it's an enjoyable beer that I had with it.
It's like plan
I
A.
also had a complex
plan A to
beer.
plan B, and then if plan B doesn't happen, we'll go to plan D. But plan D is actually plan B again, and it's
isn't plan C just plan A but without the stink?
Yes.
Yeah.
Plan C had some stink on it.
And so and I don't even think we mentioned this. We went to Living Room Theaters, which is in downtown Portland, about a block south of Powell's bookstore, which most people know where that is on Burnside, and it's just a block south. Theater's been there a long time. They have food. They have
very comfortable
beer.
seats.
Yeah.
I've been before.
They have big. I mean, you don't want to sit in the very back row because those are hard chairs and not comfy couches.
Oh, I didn't realize. I've always been in comfy couches.
Yeah.
It's kind of like what
you're a man of
Cinetopia
class.
was, but a smaller version.
Yeah. So they fit about 50 people in the theater, maybe.
And they
Give or
participate in when film festivals come through town and stuff too. I think if you're a film nerd in Portland, this is definitely a place to know about.
And it's independent, so they do get a lot of independent films.
Yeah, they had
also do second run or
Are You There, Cosme? Margaret movie that I had no idea existed, but then also Guardians of the Galaxy 3.
Yeah.
They covered all the bases.
Yeah, they're doing a lot, and so movies come and go there quite
beer and
quickly.
burgers too.
Yes.
They had some really
delicious.
Nice beers as well.
Yeah, so they had 4 or 5 beers on draft. I think they had 5.
I know Aaron and I did the wheat.
Yeah,
and I got a Pilsner
I
partway
can
through.
tell you what they had. So it's always nice. Back in the day, you could always go to a theater and just grab a beer when you go in, because the places that we would go see films, we purposely go to places that had that.
Just listeners understand, this is a normal Oregon thing. I know it does not happen everywhere, but in Oregon, you can go to a movie theater and enjoy an adult beverage if you're an adult.
I think if your area has a... that's what I'm thinking.
Alamo Theaters.
Alamo, that's
Alamo
it.
Theaters
Alamo.
on the
All
East
right,
Coast
so cut
have them.
all of that until I say Alamo, and I'll say
No, political theater.
Yeah, no, Alamo Theater is we're doing it before Cinetopia, I believe.
Yeah,
they've been around a long
They got one in
time.
Winchester, and that was a whole experience. I have a beer with my movie?
Yeah.
Right.
What a concept.
And you can even take your food into the theater with you. If it, we
Or
got
you
there.
could order in the theater, and they'll bring it to you.
Correct.
Right.
So anyway, we got beers with movie.
Correct. The beers that they had on draft, they had Everybody's Hazy Gigantic IPA for $7 a pint, and then they had $6 pints of Laurelwood Free Range Red, Fort George Cavatica Stout, Occidental Brewing Hefeweizen, and Pfriem Pilsner. And I think we tried all of those except for the Everybody's and the Gigantic. And we didn't do the Reverend Nance. They had a cider, and they have a Happy Mountain kombucha and a Reverend Nance cider available as well, but we didn't do those. I started with Occidental with the food, and then moved over to the Pilsner. Can't go wrong with that.
Well, that's funny. I did the reverse.
Yeah, and then I know that you also had the stout, Deb.
I did. I went for the Occidental, which I appreciate them giving me a lemon, sorry. A lemon to go with the hef, which was really nice. And then I went to the Cavatica Stout because they have a burger, and so I wanted to do the Cavatica Stout because it's a little bitter, so it would cut through the fattiness of the burger.
Yeah. You had the red, didn't you?
And I had the Laurelwood Red. I figured that would go very well with the movie because it's kind of what I would think you would drink in a tavern.
Yeah. Totally. And
which is where every D&D adventure begins.
And this one sort of does also.
You're not wrong.
They met the two, Chris Pratt and the Barbarian, their characters.
Chris Pine.
Chris Pine, not Pratt, sorry. Chris Pine.
Yeah, there's only 19 Chris's in every movie. It's stupid.
Character Edgar and Holga.
Yeah, Edgar and Holga, they met in a tavern. I mean,
Successful history check, Aaron.
I mean, that's exactly what happens. You meet in a tavern, drinking out of a weird shaped glass.
I will have to say, I love the fact that they put a huge red herring in the beginning of the movie.
Oh, yeah.
The beginning of the movie has a huge red herring, and it's absolutely amazing and so good.
It's a massive fish that's the color of blood.
Yes. Well, don't steal things if you don't need to, because that'll come back to bite you.
Well, I mean, yeah.
You greed. Don't be greedy.
You know what didn't bite me was that delicious Hefeweizen.
Yeah, so I would agree. So I also started with Occidental Hefeweizen. So it's 4.7%, 20 IBU. It's a really clean, classic American. It's an Americanized version of a Bavarian Hefeweizen.
Mm-hmm. Oh, okay.
So it's gonna have. It's cloudy. It's got a little bit of that ester note to it. It's not very banana heavy. It's more the clove than banana.
Right.
So it's very approachable to most people in the U.S. versus a traditional Bavarian Hef is going to be very banana and very, very heavy clove.
But I love some of those Hefeweizen esters that even if it does verge into a little bit of banana, I'm ready for that. I like it. This one didn't have a lot of banana.
No,
a little bit of clove,
bitterness, which is super nice.
Right.
Yeah, it has very low.
A lot of the hefs that I've tried, they try to boost up the bitterness, and it's like Hefeweizen should not be bitter at any point in time.
It was clean. It was light. It was really, really pleasant. Deb, do you think it matched the movie very well?
I think it did because, like I said, there's some softness to the movie because you have different elements that happen, but also it just kind of goes with certain sections. Whereas, say, for example, like the Laurelwood Red is more like a tavern, like the Cavatica Stout is more like, like your robust, like the fighting parts and like the
Sure.
I feel like the Hef went well with the montages of the which is a big check mark in my book of that's perfect. Show what this weird world looks like. So if we get sequels down the road, it's already set up. Yeah, there's a lava area, but why would you not think that's in the other movie?
Yeah,
I thought it matched that really, really well.
How far away from civilization was that tundra area where they had the prison? I mean, come on.
They showed a map.
I mean, that was in the previews too. I mean,
we're going to handwave that.
There were like 5 named regions. They showed a map.
Yeah.
It was a long ways, but I was happy with choosing the Hefeweizen watching this
that
because
was a
it's
call.
like kind of a light adventure story that you're in. You're ready to enjoy it. It's nothing too complicated, nothing too heavy.
Exactly.
A Hefeweizen, it's a nice beer that you're going to drink and enjoy. You don't have to get too intellectual about it. It doesn't need to be overly complicated.
Yeah.
It was a well done beer for the movie.
You guys got Blake and Dan. You both got the Pilsner, right?
Yeah, Pfriem Pilsner.
You got the Pilsner later in the movie. It works pretty well with the main scene.
It's a little sharpness, but that Pilsner has a little bit of hotness to it, a little sharp note. But that's I don't think any of these would distract from the film at all.
No,
if anything, they kind of complements it a little bit, and you're going to be drinking something good and you're watching something funny.
Yeah.
So I think it worked
Easy
those
drinking,
two things.
Not super complex.
Dan, is there a beer that you think you would want to avoid for a movie like this?
Something that's super sour or something that
Like extra funky
Belgian stuff wouldn't work with
Yeah.
Okay, I see that. I can see that.
You don't want a slow sipper. You want something you can just drink.
Yeah, right. Or like a double IPA with something that's like super grippy on the back and just like tears your palate apart.
I'm trying to watch Bradley Cooper be a cute little halfling, and I can't get this quaff off my tongue.
Yeah. I like to wear my furs on my back, not on my tongue, please.
Wow. Gross.
Which they had on. They were wearing furs when they. Yes. I don't know. They like. I mean, it is
hide armor is like what 12 plus dexterity.
Yeah, I mean it's like straight up. They just like run up into this like encampment and steal some horses, and it's like, wow, there's
that's never happened at our table.
Never ever happened with us playing.
He's a thief. That's what happens. There's horse thieves. It's a known thing. I want to ask. Okay, where like in the realm of like fantasy. How much does this owe to Lord of the Rings? How much does this owe to Game of Thrones? How much does this owe to like predecessor
How
movies?
much does this owe to Monty Python?
Yes. That's a question I want to ask.
Comedy brings it all together. There's not that much comedy in Lord of the Rings. There's some sight comedy, sight gags and stuff, but there's no... It's not like we're straight up like making fools of ourselves and it's fun. That's a very serious movie.
I got the idea to ask that from the IMDb. When asked about the movie, the directors were like, well, we don't want to go full... bore into like to a point where it's like silly satire. We want jokes, but we want to tell a story.
Right.
We have a story we want to tell.
Right.
And I love the fact that the people who made the film are the people from Freaks and Geeks.
Yeah. John Francis Daly was the younger brother of Linda Cardellini's character's person.
Man, Freaks and Geeks, that was a long time ago. Great show.
Yeah.
But if you
Carlos the Dwarf, I think.
90s demographic, you might have seen Freaks and Geeks, and this kind of a cool like throwback to like some of those things that they talked about in the show, which they then brought into the movie.
Yeah. Oh, Brian, what was your favorite scene? I'm gonna call you on the spot because I know
you sure are.
Yeah.
Well, I can filibuster, Brian, if you want to take a moment to think, because I have one.
Do you?
Yeah, filibuster. I'll think about it.
So the cute redhead who I don't want to Doric. I don't want to spoil too much, but there's a scene where she's victorious, where she has conquered an adversary, and the way that she just like keeps fighting after she already won.
You know,
that's always fun.
You can go to zero.
A great
you
scene.
can go to zero hit points. They're not dead. They're just unconscious. She was making sure.
But like but this says something about the intensity of her character, and you know the motivation of that character, and that character like you know doesn't have a lot of like break power, you know, to like stop and calm down. Like no, if they're in a fight and and I think that was like very much in tune with that character and like who that character was.
Oh, totally, 100%.
And I mean, it was a little funny, but it was also like, that checks out. That checks out for Doric. Like, and I loved seeing that. I thought it was kind of funny. It was really also really satisfying.
But as a druid, she didn't heal anyone.
You don't have to. You don't have to.
Oh, I don't want to get bogged down in class details. Class.
You're a rules lawyer. You're
you did make that your expertise.
Come on.
But this like after it's like the 2-minute rule. If you discuss it and research it for 2 minutes and you haven't found the real actual answer in the rule book, you make a snap decision, you move on, and you continue the story.
You can't wild shape 5 times in a row.
No, you can't. But she did it. She has a ring or something.
And the reality is that is my favorite scene.
The wild shaping.
Yeah. So the redhead druid, Doric, her power is to change into different animals.
Yeah.
And there, which is wild shaping in the game.
In the D&D
D&D world.
Yep.
So there's a scene where she has to go from animal to animal to animal to escape. And a lot of the shape changes are very clever.
If I recall, she started as fly, went to mouse, back to herself,
and then
then mouse, then
cat,
bird,
then bird,
then cat,
then deer.
Then
the
bird
the
creature,
ostrich.
Bird ostrich will continue.
The fantasy ostrich,
fantasy emu,
then deer.
And then she stayed a deer.
And then she stayed the deer.
Yeah.
She got out as a deer.
But that was a very good scene.
She did be a deer, right?
Yes, she did.
Yeah.
It's a joke.
Inside joke from the movie. Yes.
And maybe a second favorite scene was the kind of the heist part where they were. how do I explain it without giving it all away?
A bank robbing scene with a lot of ingenuity. A bank robbing scene.
They basically have a portal gun and they work that into the heist scene.
Right. Yeah. So, but essentially, if you think of a bank robbing buddy movie, like they crack the safe. They crack a safe.
Yeah.
And the way they do it is extraordinarily
inventive.
Clever. Yeah.
And things go wrong.
Of course.
And it's funny, and yet they think quickly on their feet, and it's just enjoyable to watch. And it feels very familiar. Even though it's a fantasy D&D movie, it feels like a heist movie.
Well, so the analogy I'm thinking of, Brian, like in the the 90s and 80s, when these bands had these metal songs, they would say if you could play an acoustic version of the song and still have it sound good without the distortion and amplification, without the electric guitar, you knew you had a good song.
Yeah.
Mm-hmm. And I almost think like if you can take a buddy movie and a bank heist story and you can put it into a different setting, like a fantasy setting, and it still works in the quote unquote acoustic setting that you've got, like that means it's a good story. It's a good story that works, and I think that's part of what makes this movie succeed.
That brings it a wider appeal than people who just play this game,
right?
Which goes back to kind of our initial thesis or question: does this work for someone who doesn't play D&D?
Right.
Just like we asked the German, like literally, maybe a minute to 2 minutes after we got out of the movie. Hey, what did you think of this? He was like, I didn't really understand it, but it was cool.
It was entertaining.
I enjoyed it.
It was entertaining.
It was fun.
Yeah.
I've seen lots of movies I didn't understand and enjoyed.
Yeah,
most of them, right?
The last episode we watched Five Obstructions.
I mean, I'm sitting there counting out the spell slots. I'm like, I was like, oh, that.
Well, he doesn't have to worry about spell
slots.
slots. The character from my favorite scenes, anytime Holgo is in a 1-on-5 fight.
Yes.
Because I love martial arts movies. I love kung fu movies. I hate when a film does too many quick cuts to cover bad choreography.
Oh, 100%.
And I think the choreography in this movie is incredible. She's, especially towards the later half of the movie when she's in that forge area, swinging hot irons around. The one shot of the guy like reaching for a sword, she hits him, he falls back. She grabs the next thing, he reaches for the next thing, hits him. It's this beautiful back and forth. It's clean. You can see what's happening. Yeah. I love it.
And I like the fact that she's not like all powerful, because they get like
they punch her a couple times and then she uses a bow to smack them.
Well, she gets hit, but she's like a boxer who can take a hit.
I also love
half the job.
The use of like implements and like just like
anything you can grab.
You can grab it.
Yeah,
a potato is a deadly weapon if thrown hard enough.
Correct. I'll allow it.
Hit with a russet, they hurt.
They hurt,
especially if it's raw. Right? Yeah. But I have not been hit by a russet. Full disclosure. Let's hope I live my whole life that way.
All right, well, get ready.
Watch to the end of the movie, and you can see that happen, and it's not pleasant. It takes him down.
But I do think the fight scenes, like the barbarian who's a melee fighter, who's got this axe, that's kind of her MO. Those are all really well done, but I think all the fight scenes stand up. Like each of the decisions of like what each character decides to do in a fight makes sense for their skills and abilities. Right. The choreography is also good because if you've been listening for a long time, you'll remember Brian had explained a few months ago that sometimes the shots will be shortened to kind of confuse the viewer and kind of hide some of the action of what's happening, of what is a move and a counter move in a fight and how those chain together.
Yeah.
And this the shots aren't really compressed. They're not. I didn't notice.
It's not too cutty. No,
it's not too cutty.
And the fights are really well coordinated and choreographed.
Yeah.
So that they can do more than 1, 2, 3 and cut. 3 different moves. One from the attacker, a defense move, and another attack, and then you've got to cut. Otherwise, the actors won't remember their choreography.
Well, and also, too, part of what sells a good fight scene is when somebody gets hit, how do they sell that, of what that impact does to their body, and how do they move? How do they, get pushed out of the space they were just occupying? And that all seemed, relatively true to life. That all seemed kind of well done and realistic here, too.
It's like, I like in the beginning when she gets the axe, when she's like trying to fend off people, and then Egan is trying to do something and it's not working, and you can totally see that this is actually like a D&D thing, like when you roll really bad,
he's failing a lot of rolls.
And you're like, ow, I could do this and I failed.
All right. Well, so you're still bound. She's gonna keep beating dudes up, I guess.
Yeah. So the Red Wizard with her controlling the stone creature.
Ooh,
and failing her concentration save because she got hit upside the head with a bag of spice.
I thought it was garlic.
I don't know what it was.
I thought it was garlic also.
It might have been. I don't know.
Got hit by like a garlic bulb.
Either way, it's very funny.
It's hilarious because they're both root vegetables. They're both hard.
Right.
Yeah. I mean, no, it's good. If you do go see it, I mean, it's not going to be in the theater for much longer.
But it is on digital.
It's already out on digital. It's video on demand at this point.
How much does this movie benefit from a big screen versus home theater?
Well, they have a whole scene at the very beginning where they thank you for being an audience member.
I hate it.
I'm
so cringy.
I'm so cringy about thank you for coming to a theater to watch this. And
that felt like a wet blanket.
I appreciate that Michelle Rodriguez looks pained having to say, "I'm glad you're here." Something about the popcorn. I don't want to fucking be here.
I thought that's just her normal look, like that she's got like bitchy resting face or something.
So pretentious.
But it's whatever. It's fine.
Can you watch this on your couch with a couple buddies and have a?
Absolutely.
I think
this is a group movie. You can watch it alone, but it's not going to be as fun.
So Blake earlier said, "How close is this to Lord of the Rings?" This is not an epic film where you have to sit and absorb these vast expanses.
It's a buddy heist film.
It's a fun, medium close film.
Yeah. Awesome.
If you've ever seen Balden's Root, it's a thing on YouTube where these people have like this skit that they're doing, and it had a similar vibe.
This sounds made up.
That. No, it's actually, there's a whole skit. It's called Balin's Root. I messed up the name. It's called Balin's Root, and it has like this whole vibe about this, and it's like, oh, adventure. I need your help and things like this, and so it kind of has a similar vibe.
Like a fantasy comedy feel.
It's like hey, if you were to actually play like The Witcher, and like all the dialogue you have to go through, and it's like you actually act out the dialogue.
Do you remember
that's painful.
Felicia Day, The Guild?
Yeah,
it kind of has some that same sort of
has that vibe.
Yeah, a little bit.
Yeah. So if you play video games, if you know D&D at all, if you have any reference to it, you'll enjoy it.
If you have an attraction to Chris Pine, like we all do,
yes. I mean, and there's a lot of man spreading. There's a lot of man spreading with them jeans he had on, or were they leathers? I couldn't quite tell.
I'm pretty sure they were leather.
I thought it was like moleskin. All right,
but they show a lot. Anyway, we'll just skip on past that part.
Blake and I were talking about the redhead. You can, right.
And the paladin. Right. My goodness,
the paladin,
he is a handsome man.
He had it going on. Like I said, that was my favorite character. I think because of how he presented and the actions he took. Now, I'm not so sure about the big fight scene in the hanging city because that was dope. That was like, okay, so and Blake had mentioned you can count it out. Like when you're playing D&D, one action is like
6 seconds.
6 seconds.
Yeah. Each round of combat equates to 6 seconds.
And so did it just he have individual initiative against each of them, or because some of them he had to take multiple swings, and I'm just sitting here. I know I'm getting way into the weeds a little bit with this, but having played the game a long time and trying to think how did they represent, and they tried to be as true to it as they could in some ways. So I know that it's like, it's just a fight scene, but still thinking about how did that work out. And they were already because they're already dead, as he said. It's really hard to kill something that's already dead, and the guys just stand right back up. I mean, it waits till like the end of the combat though for them to stand up. Though
in the video game world, there's a famous quote. It might have been Sid Meier that said it, and I think that the quote is to the effect of like, when the rules get in the way of a good time, or when the rules get in the way of having fun wins.
Oh yeah, the rule of cool.
Like you can count out like you get 2 attacks for every action for every 6 seconds.
So this film is not a treatise on the D&D
no, not at all.
Set.
No, it's based on it.
You're not going to learn watching the movie.
No,
I can become an owl bear when I grow up.
Yeah. I mean, if you do enough drugs, sure.
I didn't see anyone roll a single die in this whole movie.
I know, right? I know. So they were supposed to.
It's garbage.
There was talk fans were saying they wanted to see like a zoom out as Matt Mercer running a game for people. I'm kind of glad they did.
I was just thinking about that, and I'm so glad there's not the framing story for like Stranger Things where they had this like D&D table, and then no, it's just let the story exist. It's a different world. It can have its complete existence independent of some sweaty teenagers in a basement playing D&D, or grown ass men and
sweaty
ladies
adults
drinking beer playing D&D,
and being loud and obnoxious to each other, which is what we do.
Yep.
Yeah, we're very funny.
That bird character's still banned, Dan.
So, and they did have an Aarocoke in this. That's all I'm going to say.
Jonathan.
And his name was Jonathan. That's all
So it sounds like pretty much any beer you can just enjoy without having to think too hard. It'd be like the pick for this.
Yeah.
Yeah, nothing real complex.
I'd say nothing too heavy. If you got like a double extra stout, something
Maybe
real...
save that for Lord of the Rings.
Yeah.
That's fine.
Yeah, something that's going to put you to sleep because that film will. It's so long. It's so long.
I'm just glad they took all the poetry from Tom Bombadil out of the Hobbit, because that went on for pages. I was so mad at it at the time.
Yeah, I mean, this is like 90 minutes, and it's very contained. There aren't a lot of resting spots. There's some slower scenes where it's like when they're on the beach after they get out of the city, or not after the city, but after they escape the Underdark.
Yeah, to set up the stakes and move the story along, and then
it's a nice rest. It's a nice, a bunch of action, calm moment.
It's a long rest.
We're going to take a long rest. Well, it was a short rest. It was only 6 hours, so we're going to rules lawyer that one.
Short rest is an hour, dude.
I regret
6
my
to 8 for long.
of being rules lawyer.
All right,
yeah.
All right.
As the DM, I know better.
Okay.
All right. Well,
so final thoughts on the movie? Thumbs up from everybody.
I think
thumbs up.
I think everybody very much.
Oh yeah, I recommend it to everybody. Like I told my parents, you never played, you're gonna have a good time. It's a fun movie.
So 10 thumbs up.
Yes. We got lots of thumbs up. Find some good beers you like. This is not a challenging film to watch. It's pretty easy, straightforward. So I think our best advice is just find something like that as well to consume if you are going to.
Yeah.
And remember to hydrate.
If you don't hydrate, you're going to roll a critical fail and dihydrate.
Yes, you will. And as always, the opinions expressed during the taping of this recording are those of the hosts. And I want to just, again, thanks for hanging out and listening to us banter on about some wonderful films, including this Dungeons & Dragons Honor Among Thieves.
Well, this is Aaron. Thanks for listening. And dear listener, if you're going to start a campaign, take the lucky feat. It's so great, it's almost broken.
It is broken. We all take it.
This is Blake saying, good game, everyone. We'll meet next week. We're going to reroll our characters because everyone died.
Yeah, there you go. Oh.
Well, this is Deborah, and don't forget to rage.
And this is Brian, and please patronize your local independent theater.
There you go. All right, everybody. Thanks for listening.
Bye.
Take care.
Clatter, 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 dice noise.
Till the end of the night, I pray he behave, winged of heel, and newly returned from the fight. I need a hero. I shall hold out for a hero till the morning light. He must be assured, ere true to his word, with a wit that will thrill and excite, thrill and excite.